Welcome back to Rare Elvis Photos. Sorry I've been kind of missing in action with reading the books, but I've got a good stretch of time now where I got some huge projects that I was tasked with on my work done. So that gives me some time to read. And when I say huge, I'm talking 70, 80-hour work weeks. And that goes into the weekend. But all that's done. I'm in a decent little stretch now. So we're going to start doing some reading. I know I've seen some of the comments that y'all put down about, hey, let's get back to reading some books, please. I've tried to share some different interviews out there and break them up. And, some people were like, hey, that's somebody else's interview. I'm aware of that. Everybody's interview is somebody else's interview. But when you examine the interview, when you talk about it, when you bring your own original ideas and content into it, including some of my music, it's perfectly fine to do that. Just for there's maybe one or two people that have mentioned that to me, even got an email about it. That being said, what I like to do best, obviously, is not so much the interviews, but the books and having the conversations. Billy Stanley messaged me last week, and I got to give him a call. I owe him a call back, maybe today or tomorrow, and so we can get some conversations set back up. Darian Matera, I'm waiting on some books to come in. Even though this is Rare Elvis Photos, Darian Matera is part of the history of Elvis in a sense, where he wrote the book Are You Lonesome Tonight? And it's one of those things that is controversial, but a lot of y'all want me to read some of his other books, so I might, but I've got a couple other channels I might do it on as well. But in order for us to continue talking to Derry, yeah, we can have a fun conversation, but he doesn't want it to be rehashing the same things over and over again, and I don't know if y'all do either. But he's definitely a fun personality. He rubs people wrong, some of the people wrong, that's for sure. But they say you can't please everybody all the time. You just try to please as many people as you can. And that's why I'm reading. So Child Bride. That's the first thing we're going to dig into today. And we are going to... Okay, we're going to start with this section about Ann-Margret. Now, we might have read a couple paragraphs in the last reading, but I'd like to kind of go back a couple paragraphs and continue. So, thank you for those that have left me super thanks. I'll make sure I give you guys a shout out when you do that. Those that have joined as members, I appreciate that. It's a $9.99 a month. I think it's the lowest one. And if you guys would just email me your birthdays and maybe what your favorite Elvis subject, favorite Elvis movie, something. I'd love to do something special on your birthday every year. And I think you have highlighted comments as well being a member. Here we go. To reading now. Ann-Margret later referred cryptically to her promise that Elvis had made that prevented them from being together, though in her words they had talked about marriage. So Ann and Elvis had talked about marriage. But this is the one that got in the way. Okay? And of course, now she looks more like a clown or like the Joker. But she was pretty back then. I mean, most people can agree to that. Maybe she tried to look like somebody else, like Ann-Margret or like, all the other movie actresses, Deborah Paget and stuff. Okay, so Ann said his wish was that we could stay together, she wrote in her 1994 memoir. That's the part that I skipped because I'm not going to read that. I'm going to read Ann's memoir. We're going to do another reading of that today or tomorrow as well and get back on track for that. Elvis returned to Memphis and to Priscilla early in November. What happened next at Graceland indicated that he might have communicated his decision to Ann-Margret, who sent him a telegram that read, I just don't understand. It was signed Scooby. That makes me sad. That tells me that Ann was really emotionally invested in Elvis and that she really thought that they had a future together. Signed Scooby. Elvis's pet name for her. And then I found the telegram, related Priscilla, and in that telegram was what happened. There were two telegrams. One said, I just don't understand, and I believe there was another one with a song title on it, and I don't recollect what it was, but it indicated that the affair had ended. It was over. Ann-Margret, according to Joe, who kept in touch with her, was devastated by the way it had ended. Elvis's choice of Priscilla over Ann-Margret was persuasive proof that the die had been cast for Priscilla Bobblehead's future, that in fact Elvis had committed himself to an eventual marriage. Elvis did tell me, affirmed Charlie Hodge, Annie used to come up to the house and he said Charlie, I stopped going with Annie on purpose because I was beginning to feel too much for her. And I knew I was going to marry Priscilla. Because, according to Suzanne Finstead, there was a contract, a spoken contract, that tied Elvis to Priscilla. And there were threats that were made if that contract was not fulfilled. That's the important part, and that's part of why I'm continuing to read these books and talk about the subject, sharing Priscilla interviews and stuff, to get that message out, because she has her own PR campaign that's opposite. There were, in the collective judgment of Elvis's friends, supporting arguments for the decision to eliminate Anne, most of them turning upon Elvis's perception that he could more readily subjugate Priscilla. She represented something that he could bring up, suggested Patty. Now, I do have to say, these so-called Elvis friends, I don't think a lot of them have protected Elvis like they should have. Now, when we read the Elvis and Kathy book, she did a wonderful job of protecting Elvis, but at the same time, talking about some reality. And I'm not saying anything about Patty Perry or any of these people that are in here. I'm just saying it's something for us to consider as we see their actions. Somebody's asked me to read the Elvis What Happened book, which I have here, and I've read before. And I may, just to revisit history and really to maybe speak some of the truth of what we think as Elvis fans is falsehoods about the book, to put you in Elvis Presley's shoes of him having to read that book. You know, it's not going to be a fun read if we do it. You know, so let me know. I mean, once again, they say you can't please everybody, but, and I might have to gloss over some of the stuff that was written and not say it exactly as the way it said it, because I don't feel like doing that. You know what I'm saying? If Red and Sonny and Dave really wrote what's in that book, and it wasn't Steve Dunleavy, he had to get the information from somewhere, right? That's what I think. And I know there's some battles going on in the Hebler world, and I don't know much about it, except I know who the people I think are Elvis's true friends that cared about his spirit and his soul. I know who those folks are. That weren't just good time Charlies. And I'm not saying Charlie and Charlie Hodge being a good time Charlie. I'm just saying that weren't just there for the ride, for the benefits, for the status. And that's something that, unfortunately, is probably very much the truth with the majority of people that were around Elvis. They were there for the ride, for the benefits. They say if you can count your friends on one hand, you're probably the luckiest person in the world. You know, you don't get to two. You know, you normally only have one or two or three really good, true personal friends that are true blue friends. So, moving on. It was a different kind of love, according to Joan. Priscilla was still the home and strength. Anne was making him stretch, and I think that Anne made him get outside his comfort zone. In many ways, he liked that, because he was afraid of that. And Priscilla was malleable. By casting aside Anne for Priscilla, Elvis had rejected an adult relationship with a woman, an opportunity for mature love. Now, this is Suzanne Finstead's opinion, right? He was threatened in the judgment of virtually everyone who knew him by Ann-Margret's fame and independence. Priscilla was like me, Patty said. I was in awe, but Ann-Margret, she and Elvis were equals. She was the best girl, the most fun. They would have been the perfect pair, but she wouldn't give up her career. She wouldn't be with him 24 hours a day, and he wanted someone who would be there 24 hours a day. I partially agree with that, partially don't. Obviously, him and Linda were around each other 24 hours a day, according to Linda's own admission the first year of the relationship. Now, isn't that just true with all love? I mean, you don't want to be away from the other person, and you hope that they don't want to be away from you, because then it makes you kind of feel like maybe it's not an equal relationship. But after a while, and maybe that's where Elvis, no, I think that's where the opinion here probably came. Some of these people probably saw that when he was with Priscilla in the beginning, full time, nonstop. It certainly wasn't the same thing with Anita, although Anita did travel. It certainly wasn't the same thing with Dixie Locke, and certainly wasn't the same thing with June Monico, because he had lots of different girls. When did Elvis decide to start potentially trying to settle down, in a sense? It wasn't with Priscilla. It wasn't with her. Because he was with Ann, right? And then, after Priscilla, he had a litany of ladies. And Linda was the one that stuck around the most, and it seemed like he was settling down serious with Linda. And how old was Elvis then? What, 32? Oh, wait a second here. 30, 35, 37, 37, I guess. He was born in 35. He was with Linda in 72, basically. So 37. But he did things on his own. Now, you know, I'm just talking about human nature. You do want to be around that person as much as possible, but you do need healthy separation, right? We all need it. You know, so in this scenario, they're just talking about maybe what they saw. And they're psychoanalyzing Elvis, of course, which is easy enough to kind of do since, you know, he's got a history of relationship stuff. And do I think it's right? And to be put into a book? I don't know. It's just people's opinions, I guess. But as long as somebody doesn't call Elvis something so terribly nasty, you know, I'm okay with opinions, right? Opinions are important. You have opinions. I have opinions. Other Elvis channels have opinions. All right. By casting aside Ann for Priscilla, we talked about that. Elvis had rejected an adult relationship with a woman, an opportunity for mature love. He was threatened in the judgment of virtually everyone. Okay, so we got through that part. Many of Elvis's intimates shared this opinion. Ann-Margret was a great time, Joe reported, but Elvis knew Ann had a career and wasn't going to give it up for him. He wouldn't expect her to. That's the key word there. He wouldn't expect her to. You know why? Because Elvis loved Ann-Margret. My stomach. We'll talk about that shortly. And he knew he could never be with someone who was in the limelight when he wanted them there. He wanted them there when he wanted them. But that's just a big excuse that's out there. The thing is, unless if they were both shooting movies at the same time, it wouldn't be a big deal, right? If he was done shooting a movie and she was shooting a movie, guess what? You fly to Ann-Margret and you spend time with her. That's a real relationship. And I don't think they ever had the opportunity because I think there's a lot of people talking in the background of Elvis too. Even though Elvis was going to make his own decisions, he could be influenced, you know, and it was a macho time back then, which is stupid. You know, I mean, it was just the times, right? All right, let's see here. All right, so he wanted them. Not like, I'm on location, I can't do it. Priscilla, he knew, would be there whenever he wanted her. He raised Priscilla that way. And that's why he would take her, knowing he could still fool around. Now, Ann-Margret wouldn't have let that happen. Elvis apparently told Charlie Hodge, Charlie, it wouldn't work anyway with both of us in the show business. She has her managers, and I'd have my managers, and there'd be conflicts all the time. That quote can't be exactly right because Elvis had one manager. But yeah, I mean, it's conflicts. It's a consideration. But it was really this contract that Suzanne talks about that kept Elvis from Ann-Margret. There was also the ever-present issue of Priscilla's alleged purity, the importance of which never diminished for Elvis. Geraldine Kyle overheard Vernon's side of a telephone conversation at Graceland shortly before Elvis and Priscilla finally married in 1967. I was leaving to go out the front door through what they now call the jungle room, Geraldine recalled, and Vernon was talking on the phone. I don't know he was talking to you, but I heard him say, Well, Elvis told me that he knew for sure and certain Priscilla had never been with a man, and that is what Elvis saw in her. Elvis's Priscilla's original pose as a Vestal Virgin, untouched by anyone but Elvis, had become not only her image but also part of her hold on Elvis. How could she look back now? Though she had seemingly prevailed in a triangle with Ann-Margret, Priscilla was anything but confident of her footing with Elvis. He remained romantically involved with Anne for another 7 or 8 months after the London publicity incident, making her a continuing threat to Priscilla's emotional, financial, and domestic security. Her reaction, true to her conditioning, was to focus obsessively on her appearance, to make herself so alluring, so sophisticated, so glamorous, so Hollywood, that Elvis would not think of looking at another woman. Priscilla already felt inferior to the starlets, as she should have, in a sense. They had talent. They had skills mostly, and she didn't do much besides fail at math and English and science and, anyways, I'd throw that in. She was not smart, and she didn't have any skills, and she's not a business person. She can barely divide, I think. I think it's that bad. So people that give her all this credit for saving Graceland is malarkey. The business people saved Graceland, and they used Priscilla. They used her, and they used the storyline that she trapped Elvis with to save Graceland, in a sense. Elvis saved Graceland, but they used Priscilla. Priscilla is a patsy, and she's still out there flitting around making money off of the people that believed it then. There were still enough people to give her $250 a ticket that buy into it. So, Priscilla felt inferior to the starlets who passed through her movie star boyfriend's working milieu. She, by comparison, was an 18-year-old girl several months out of high school, should have probably never passed, determined to level the playing field. Thus was born the outrageous makeover with which the name Priscilla Bayou would be forever synonymous. If her students and nuns that were with her at Immaculate Conception thought she resembled a showgirl that spring, they would have presumed she turned to work at it, the streets, by Christmas. That's what it's basically saying. Got to get around the word. Her back-combed coiffure, whatever, her hair, which had been a spectacle at school, now grew in height until it resembled a wedding cake on top of her head. Think of this hat, but 2 or 3 more cowboy hats. That's basically what Priscilla, right? My goodness. I know, it was a sign of the times. Some folks had that. I get it. Her hairstyle seemed as ludicrous as the powdered wigs worn by the French aristocracy. Man, I can't pronounce sometimes right now. The aristocrats. I'm gonna get it right here. I gotta get back to the word. Aristocracy. I don't know. The French aristocrats. Let's just say that. During the reign of Louis the 16th, Patty Perry had started styling Priscilla's hair and reluctantly created the big boomba. That's what she called the beehive, for which Priscilla would be later lampooned. Now, I used to comb her hair in this boomba, and she would say, "Make it bigger, bigger, bigger." And then we would go to the den, and Elvis would say, "It's too big." And she'd blame it on me. And then she dyed it black. Patty eventually tried, but she got tired of the battle. And she was tired of being kept waiting by Priscilla, with whom she did not always get along with. So I said, "I'm not doing this anymore." Priscilla, not Elvis, as she would later claim, was clearly the architect of her famed Elvira look, though she doubtless exaggerated it in a teenager's attempt to impress him. Elsie Boaz, the owner of a Patricia Stevens charm school in Memphis, where Priscilla had enrolled to further her modeling ambitions and occupy her time, resembled the 18-year-old as obsessive about cosmetics. She liked the heavy makeup, the Cleopatra eyes, and the black hair. Now, we would tone it down, and as soon as the class was over, she'd go to the bathroom and put more makeup on. At the height of her mania, Priscilla was wearing 5 pairs of black false eyelashes simultaneously, in addition to jet black eyeliner extended outward, Catwoman style, and heavily penciled black eyebrows. She had become a parody of the painted China doll that she was so often compared to. Well, commiserated Willie Jane, you know how a young girl would feel. Elvis was in the movies. He was with all of these women like Ann-Margret, and she was competing with them, she thought. That was my opinion of why she took on the theatrical look. In Willie's opinion, Elvis didn't like it. He begged her not to do it, but she thought she had to. Now, that makes sense. That makes a lot more sense than the story that Priscilla spun in Elvis and Me, which is on the back shelf back there somewhere. That Elvis is the one that dressed her up, made her do her hair the way, Priscilla, let's just think about this. Let's just say Elvis did want a pure person that wasn't, in a sense, what he maybe thought back in the day, ruined by the world, right? That had a bunch of hurts and ideas about how bad a relationship could be. He wouldn't necessarily want somebody dressing in a certain way that looked like somebody that had worked on the streets, which is what Priscilla kind of turned herself into, according to a lot of people around her and according to history. I mean, I don't blame anybody for trying to impress somebody that they want to be with, if it's truly about love, right? Not about capturing the money, capturing the brass ring. Okay. I was definitely under a spell of what I thought was love, Priscilla said. She said that to Barbara Walters in a revealing choice of words. In reality, it was competition, ego, and Priscilla's goal-driven personality. The truth of this became almost pathetically obvious when Priscilla suddenly enrolled in a dance class in Whitehaven, the Memphis suburb where Graceland was located. Then she tinted her long hair Titian, T-I-T-I-A-N, must be a color, and pulled it back from her face in a mod-style bouffant the way Ann-Margret wore hers in Viva Las Vegas. So it must be maybe red. The one person Priscilla wanted to look like when she did her hair was Ann-Margret, confirmed Dee Presley, who was fashion conscious herself and noticed the transformation. Everything like Ann-Margret she wanted to be and become. That's because Ann-Margret was the love of his life, and Priscilla knew it, commented Patty. Even Joe, who was less inclined to notice such things, agreed that Priscilla was emulating Anne. She would never admit it, but I think so. Joe's opinion was valid, for Priscilla Presley at 50 would belittle the threat Anne had once posed to her love affair with Elvis. I wouldn't say Anne was the most difficult challenge, she commented, speaking from the comfort zone of a woman who had married, divorced, and buried Elvis. Not my words. That's Suzanne Finstead. She had married, divorced, and buried him. That's what I say all the time too, though, There's a reason why Elvis went into an early grave. Joe knew better, for after Elvis died, Priscilla asked him to tell interviewers that he didn't love Ann-Margret, that he was just going out with her, that it was no big deal. Right there, manipulative, tiny, small-brained. Maybe I shouldn't have said that last part. Manipulative, tiny, soul-sucking, lying, conniving. I don't know. There's a lot more words that you can come up with. Instead of honoring Elvis and the life he had and the real relationships and the love that he felt for people, she was trying to remove Ann-Margret. Which, why in the world would she ever cooperate with this, right? She wasn't gonna. Why would she cooperate with any potential Elvis children? She wanted no focus to be on anybody else in the Elvis world except on her. Which is why she took all of Joe's home videos, basically sued him for them, so it could be her that brings it to the world and her that makes the money. It's not about Lisa. She can say it all she wants. We all know exactly how she treated Lisa, what she did to Lisa, what she financially did to Lisa, which was ruin Lisa. She was lucky. She was like a lottery winner that wastes all their money and loses it all. You know. And if there's any other indication, Priscilla, supposedly worth $50 million, was actually in the throes of bankruptcy when Bridget Cruz got with her to try to keep her from being out of bankruptcy and rebuild her career and image. Nobody wanted Priscilla except a few people that wanted to touch her because they thought if they touch her, if they talk to her, then they're around Elvis. I get the pull and appeal of hearing about Elvis's life. You know, that's why Charlie Hodge, was popular up there in Gatlinburg, and people around Elvis, and books that are written about Elvis are popular. We all want to know, right? But that's the only thing that she has. It's just that. And it wasn't even for very long, and it wasn't lasting. All right. Gotta find my section here. Ann-Margret, despite the protests, struck a jealous nerve in Priscilla. Still does today, declared Joe. Elvis's feelings for the actress remained constant throughout his life from 1964, when they broke off their relationship, until August 16, 1977, the date of his death. He sent her roses before every one of her performances, until the final one. And I don't know whether that was being so sick, being so off, what the reason was. And a lot of people feel like he knew the end was near. But you would think that he would have sent roses to Anne because he never stopped loving her. Why would he have stopped loving her, in a sense, if he, you know what I'm saying? If he continued the same behavior and adoration and friendship until the last one. Priscilla's imitation of Anne revealed yet again how methodically she analyzed her rivals and the lengths to which she would go to accomplish her objectives. I had an older dance class, recalled Joe Haynes, Priscilla's instructor that year. I would say that maybe they were like 17 to 20, and they were quite experienced in ballet, tap, and jazz. It was very hard for Priscilla to dance with them at that level. But Priscilla did impress Joe Haynes with both her talent and her tenacity. But is that true, or is that, in a sense, a status thing? Do you want to talk down about somebody that was somewhat famous in your class? I don't think I ever saw anything that was very talented out of Priscilla when it came to dancing. Did y'all? And if you do, link it in the comment or something. I was very proud of her. I really couldn't believe it, coming into a class with girls who had at least 8 to 10 years of dance training. Well, that was vintage Priscilla. When she put her mind to something, as Joan observed of her, she makes every point to delve into it. I can see that. Priscilla's eagerness to please, to get her man, was nowhere more evident than in her intimate life with Elvis. She was willing to do virtually anything that he asked to gratify him, whose own tastes still occasionally ran to the unorthodox. I knew what he liked, she said recently, and where his head was. And I wouldn't say that he was different. I would say that he was abnormal. I wouldn't say that he was abnormal. He was very healthy. Very healthy in a intimate way, too. But with many men, they have their preferences. So, what does that mean, right? Is that to protect him? Is that basically to make us all curious? To feel bad for her that he was, maybe, I don't know. But he says heavy makeout sessions rather than the act continue to be Elvis's choice with Priscilla. He got more pleasure, and other partners would attest from some of the stuff that she writes in this book. I just can't say because it's just infantile. From, I guess, kind of simulating it with clothes. Yeah, he had hang-ups, confirmed Sheila Ryan Kane, or Khan, Elvis's girlfriend in the 70s. He had a hang-up about finishing, I guess. This was, in some measure, Sheila believed, a residual fear of getting a woman pregnant and being sued for paternity. I think that if the 70s, Elvis was already, well, I don't know, Elvis wasn't aware of, if you believe the book, Are You Lonesome Tonight? If you're one of the believers, he wouldn't have been aware at that point in time, according to Lucy. But he did have that lawsuit against him, and she was tenacious about it. That lawsuit hung on for 5 or 6 years. And I don't know. I don't know if there was truth to it. I don't think there was. I think it was proven that there was no truth to that. But we all know, we all believe that there's very likely, if Elvis was as potent, supposedly, as Wedding Night, Baby, if he was that potent, it was well known that he didn't always use that. He didn't always protect himself. So why wouldn't there be others, right? But just there's no way to ever prove it without a point. And there's all these people that claim to be relatives of Elvis. Sure, and there's tons of people related to Elvis. It's not that hard to prove that, but that doesn't prove that you're a child. If you think about it, all the generations, cousins, second cousins, third cousins, you get them having children, all that stuff. There's thousands of people related to Elvis, and even more, because prior to that, if Elvis's great-great-great-grandfather had children with somebody else, and then they had children, those people had children, those people had children. I mean, we're all supposedly related if you go way, way back, right? All right, let's continue. Plus, he was a southern, small-town guy. I mean, he kind of never grew up, and simulating the act with clothes on was kind of a thing, Actually, I kind of liked it because it was high school. At the time, I thought, oh my goodness, but that's not bad after what I've been through with other men. He was not perverse at all. He liked playing. He liked the playing part. Now, Elvis's reluctance to complete the act with Priscilla left her frustrated, but as an impressionable young girl, her ego must have been shattered. Sheila, who was a teenager herself when she met Elvis, which I don't think she was. I think she was 20 or 21 or 22. I don't know, though. Had a similar experience. Let me know in the comments. I can't read that. I'm trying to figure out a way to read it. I remember the first time that we were intimate, and he didn't complete. Let's just say that way, the normal way in a sense, right? Sheila reported, and I thought, this is going to be like all of Hollywood, because your dreams just shatter one by one by one by one. And this was like the second man I'd been with. So I thought this is what men were like. Instead of having completed inside, when we were about finished, Elvis finished himself. That's what this says. And I don't even like read. I don't even like saying that. I was devastated. I thought, oh my God, I'm not good enough. What's the matter with me? Priscilla suffered her insecurities silently, keeping her own needs to herself, focused purely. Now, let me go back to that. That meant no protection, right? So, you have that. Haven't read this, but this is fairly well known. Joyce Bova, that claims. You have all the other children that claim to be children of Elvis. All the ones that you never hear about, because guess what? If Lucy DeBarban hadn't been reached out by Darren Matera, that never would have came out. Pursued for 4 years. Whether you believe it or not, the story wouldn't have came out because Lucy wasn't pursuing it. How many other potential women in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, probably more the 50s and 60s, potentially either got rid of a child or had a child or gave a child up for adoption or whatever, or lost a child? I don't know if you can put a number on it that's under 10 or above 10, but certainly, if you think that Lisa would have only been the only child that was possible for Elvis to have, it's just not mathematically right, in my opinion. All right. Priscilla, so we got that, suffered insecurity. So she suffered insecurity silently, keeping her own needs to herself, focused solely on Elvis and pleasuring him. Motivated by the fear that she might lose him to a rival. While she was still at Immaculate Conception, she acted out his favorites. That's what she says. Dressing up as a nurse or secretary, or the plaid skirt, while Elvis took photos. And I'm not going to read the next part of that section. She became a regular at the Whitehaven all-night pharmacy, picking up developed film of her roles that she played with Elvis before getting into her Catholic school outfit to study religion with Sister Rose Marie. To keep Elvis happy, Priscilla later admitted that she consented to how do I say this? She and her girlfriends while Elvis watched. That's what Priscilla said. Sometimes videotaped, which occurred at Graceland, and occasionally he would join Priscilla and yeah. So I think I don't have to say it for you to get the intention of what this is. They were all handpicked, that she made clear later, uncomfortable at recounting her private life with Elvis. So there was a trust level there. They were handpicked. Have we had any female come out to say that they were the ones that were handpicked to be with Priscilla and Elvis? I haven't heard of anyone. What does that mean? Who were the girls around at the time? Is it even true? Maybe. It's not something that hadn't occurred in this world, you know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying it didn't happen, but Joe Esposito affirmed it, that he liked that. He was aware of his bosses. Yeah, seeing two girls wrestle, and yeah, I always have to get past all this stuff here. Alan Fortress, a Presley aide, claimed the singer once explained that this stemmed from a time when, as a boy, he saw two girls fall down. That's exposing something. I can't see that. Why would Elvis say that to Alan? That's not something. That's just Alan probably putting words in Elvis's mouth. According to Priscilla, Elvis would later watch with her, the videotapes. Okay, I think that's where we're going to stop right now. Partially because it's getting a little challenging to create different dialogue that's not going to get flagged by YouTube, and also that's just kind of personal and almost it shouldn't be known. It shouldn't be. She never should have said all that stuff. Whether it's true or not that's not a judge on Elvis. It's not a critique on that, but it's used to profit, to make money, to sell books, to sell herself for interviews. It's one thing to maybe share something with a personal friend. You know what I'm saying? Somebody you trust and say, hey, I got to talk about this, It's another thing to put things in print. Which is why Elvis fans like y'all see right through her. And maybe you're a Priscilla fan, maybe you're on the fence, and maybe you forgive her some stuff and you don't judge her for some stuff, but I don't know. Anyways, I'm going to close this video with a song I wrote called Prissy B Should Lose the Presley Name, because that's how I feel. Will there be more songs about Priscilla? Maybe. I did write a song about Linda Thompson. I haven't really put on this channel yet, but maybe I'll share that at some point. Maybe when I read this Elvis, Linda, and Jeannie, or maybe I need to get Linda's biography. But something I just haven't shared yet that I did write. So maybe there'll be another one. I don't know what. But here, without further ado, thanks again for watching. If you made it to the end, it's made it to the end. And I want you guys to create a word, whatever it is. Okay? It can be survivor, because you survived it. It can be bobblehead. It can be prissy. It can be pissy. Whatever you want to put has made it to the end. Let me know you made it there. You can also do little timestamps too. I think right there next to you, if you click on that, it shows that you made it to wherever you're commenting. So anyhow, thanks again. Thanks for you subscribers. Thanks to your members. Thanks for the super thanks. Thanks most of all for your patience. Okay? I greatly appreciate y'all. Okay? Take care. Oh, you know what? I might not be able to put the Prissy B on this one. I'll share it again some other time, because I'm loading this directly so I can get it to y'all without any edits. Okay? That's the only reason I usually edit videos, and that takes an hour plus per video. So if I can get this loaded, I can get to reading some more for y'all. Okay? All right. Till next time. Rare Elvis photos. God bless y'all.